Joining us now to discuss this is Raj Goyal, Democratic strategist and former Kansas State representative, and Bart Marcois, Republican political strategist and former presidential policy advisor. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Raj, I want to start with you. As I mentioned, this is the first time Teamsters hasn't endorsed any presidential candidate since 1996. So what do you see as the significance of this, especially for the Democratic Party?
Yeah, it's really a Nothingburger, and I understand why it generates news. But one thing that you have neglected to mention is that the key battleground state locals have endorsed Kamala Harris. So in Michigan and in Pennsylvania, they've endorsed Kamala Harris. And so the key states where Teamsters are on the ground will be turning out for the Harris-Walz ticket. And you did mention that in 1996, Bill Clinton did not get the endorsement of the Teamsters, and he crushed Bob Dole in the 96 election. So I don't really think this is a major factor. Sean O'Brien has been leading the Teamsters in a different direction. And there, of course, I'm a former state rep. I won 2 state house elections. I ran for Congress. And one thing that you realize is that union membership in this country, it's no secret here, and Democrats shouldn't be ashamed to say it, is that it is trending against us. And so a lot of what a lot of the pundits call the white working class has been more in Donald Trump's camp. And that's no secret, that's no surprise. And that's why we won in 2020. We won the popular vote in 2016. So I don't really think that this affects the election calculus really at all.
And Bart, what are your starting thoughts on the significance of this?
I think I have to disagree with my colleague Raj. It's a huge development and very significant because traditionally the Teamsters have been supporting Democrats. They usually support Democrats, but their membership has been trending more and more Republican, especially under the Republican Party of Donald Trump. And it's part of the massive realignment of the two parties. The Republican Party has become the party of the working class, not just the white working class, but the working class in general of every ethnicity and every background. The Democrats, meanwhile, have become the party of big capital, big labor, big pharma, big government, and big tech. And they are the party of the billionaires and of the super wealthy, while the people who are feeling the pinch of the economy under Biden and Harris are the ones that are voting Republican. And I don't think there's anybody more tied to American liberty than truck drivers. And probably 60% of the Teamsters Union is still composed of truck drivers. The other members are maybe more aligned with the Democrat Party. And Sean O'Brien is saying, we don't have a super majority, so we're not going to endorse anybody this year.
And Raj, what's your response to what Bart just said here?
I agree on some things, but it's almost comical to hear the party of a billionaire who taunts people. He's not even probably a truly billionaire, but he taunts people about his supposed wealth. So the fact that the Democratic Party, I would agree actually that there is a realignment going on, and those are very serious trends that are happening. Look at the electoral map from a generation ago; it doesn't look anything like it does now. That being said, remember the most important fact: we've won the popular vote for the last generation, except for 2004, in which we lost it by only 100,000 votes. So even though all those things that you ticked off around who you say the Democratic Party represents, the fact of the matter is the Democratic Party represents the majority of voters in America. I don't think anybody who's a serious analyst of this election would suggest that Donald Trump will even come close to winning the popular vote, even though he's maybe got a shot at the Electoral College. So I think as you go through that checklist of who the Democrats represent, let's actually look at who the Republican Party represents. And most importantly, it's a shrinking proportion of the American electorate.
Okay, I want to focus in a little more on the Teamsters and their shifting the shift that is being shown in internal polling. So there is this showing now that there's a majority of support for Trump. About 60% of members believe the union should endorse Trump, while 34% supported Harris. Now, back in 2020, the union's internal polling showed the opposite. There was a majority support for Biden. Interesting to note there, right? Harris was also part of that ticket as his vice president. Raj, Harris is still on the ticket this time. So why do you think that this shift is happening now?
Again, this is more of an internal debate, really, in the Beltway within labor. Again, I want to point out, as I said earlier, the key battleground state locals have endorsed Kamala Harris. So, really, to be honest, in the key states, that's what you want. So the Teamsters on the ground in Michigan and Pennsylvania and the key battleground states, they're going to be busting their butts for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. So I don't really think that this is really a much ado about nothing. And Sean O'Brien is playing his politics deftly as he thinks he is. Obviously, he spoke at the Republican National Convention. He gave a speech, by the way, that stunned that audience into total silence. So he said things that have never been said before at the Republican National Convention. It was one of the most interesting speeches in Milwaukee. So again, just to repeat, the key battleground states, those locals of Teamsters have endorsed Kamala Harris. So I really don't even think it's accurate or fair to say that the Teamsters haven't endorsed Kamala Harris. They have in key battleground states. The National Union has just chosen to sit out this election. They did not endorse Donald Trump. They sat out this election nationally, as they did in '96, in which was a Democratic romp. So I really don't think this is really going to affect the election remotely, like the pundits would suggest. I think they're looking for something, frankly, because all the polls are showing momentum toward Kamala Harris, and there needs to be something for the Trump side, because he is truly in a state of almost meltdown.
And Bart, personal backgrounds aside, focus on policy of these two candidates. What is it about perhaps Trump or Harris's policies that's influencing this increased support from union members for Trump, as it would seem?
The biggest influence on this shift away from the Democrats and toward the Republicans is the record of the last 3.5 years. The Biden-Harris administration has been an absolute disaster for consumers, for business operators, for everyone except the truly wealthy, privileged few in America. Those are the only people who get money from government contracts, defense contractors, pharma contracts. Those are the people who've done well in the Biden-Harris administration. Everybody else has done poorly, and they look back and they remember that when Donald Trump was president, they were better off. Everything in this election comes down to two questions. Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And what has Kamala Harris been doing for the past 3.5 years? Everything comes down to those two questions.
And Raj, I think it is important to acknowledge what you mentioned, that Harris does still have a significant amount of support and backing from these union members. What does she need to do now to bring back that support that was lost between 2020 and now?
Well, look, I think most of the labor movement is strongly behind Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And I have to say, Bart did a better job than his candidate of actually articulating those two questions. His candidate is out there talking about cats and dogs. And frankly, choose your time of the day and find Donald Trump's position on reproductive freedom. You asked Bart, hey, why has there been this shift, and why do the polls stand where they are? Donald Trump has had every position imaginable on one of the most important moral issues of the day, which is abortion. He was a pro-choice Democrat for 20 years in Manhattan. Then he was a pro-life evangelical Republican. Then he packed the court to reverse Roe. Then he was for states' rights. Then he was for the Florida ban, against the Florida ban. Now he's for IVF. Nobody can keep track of where this guy is on one of the most important moral issues of our day. So I have to take serious issue with Bart's view of the record of the last 4 years, and the polls are showing that. We do have a fundamental realignment in this country. Bart and I would agree that there is too much top down in this country. Some people have said we are in an age of plutocracy, and it's exemplified by Donald Trump, a fake billionaire who keeps calling himself a billionaire.
Bart, how do you want to respond?
I don't think the personal attacks matter, and I don't think that abortion politics are going to play as much in this election as the Democrats are hoping. They have been running against Donald Trump on a campaign of fear and loathing for 8 years, and abortion is the tired thing that they keep going back to, trying to frighten women into voting against Donald Trump. Donald Trump has made it perfectly clear what his position is. Abortion is a matter that should be decided by the states. The Supreme Court justices that he's rightly proud of having appointed voted to return the issue to the states, which has been the position of major legal scholars from both parties. for 50 years, and Donald Trump is the one who did it. It should not be a federal issue. And during the debate, I think he took that issue off the table and said, this shouldn't be a federal issue. Nobody can get their bill passed through the Congress one way or the other. They've been trying for 50 years to pass it. I'm the one who said, stop trying to do a national bill on this, return it to the states, and it's not an issue anymore. We return solely, and it doesn't matter what people think of Donald Trump. What matters is what they think of the policies that he did. And they don't care what he said or what Raj says or what I say or what Harris says. All they know is what their lives were like when he was president. They were better off when gas was $2 a gallon and eggs cost $2 a dozen. And life was better, and it has been worse, and there's no sign of it getting better if Harris continues the policies that she's outlined.
Okay, gentlemen, let's focus a little more on the two candidates' performances with union members. Bart, as Raj did mention, Harris does still have significant support. What can Trump do to capitalize on this momentum right now and boost his support with union workers?
I'm so glad I got a chance to answer this. I was afraid I was going to have to let it go. Thank you. What this reminds me of is the election of 2004, when all the union leadership endorsed John Kerry for president and George W. Bush was running. I was working at the time organizing voters and voter turnout in Akron, Ohio, a Democrat stronghold, a union stronghold. And you know who we had coming into our center asking to help make phone calls on our behalf? We had union members coming in saying, my union leadership has endorsed, it was Kerry, right? Yeah, has endorsed John Kerry, but we're not voting for him. We're voting, all the members are voting for Bush, and we are here making phone calls. 30% of the people at our phone banks in Akron, Ohio, in Summit County, Ohio, were union members. And by the way, we had an enormous turnout in Summit County, Ohio. It was the key to winning the state of Ohio and to winning the election for George W. Bush. That's the dynamic I see happening in Pennsylvania and Michigan and elsewhere around the country today with the Teamsters and with almost every other union. All of the old industrial unions, the members back Donald Trump. It doesn't matter what their local leadership or their national leadership say. The members are backing Donald Trump because they want a return of American manufacturing jobs, and only Donald Trump is able to do that.
All right, gentlemen, I want to quickly get your final thoughts, just 30 seconds each here. What do Harris and Trump need to do to really get their pulse on the American worker and understand their needs and how they're feeling? Raj?
Yeah, well, she's doing that right now. And you know what Bart's talking about is old news. He told the story from 20 years ago. I was on the ballot in 2010. Of course, we know that phenomenon, and it's already been baked into the analysis. And that's why Joe Biden won in 2020. It's why Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016. So that's really not very salient to what Kamala Harris has to do now. And just to be very succinct about it, she needs to lay out a vision, which she's done, on how she'll make your life better off for the next 4 years. She's going to cut taxes for people who make $400,000 or less. She's going to grow the economy. Donald Trump, when he left office, things were not good. This economy was in a free fall, and people remember the divisiveness and the chaos. So if you want a better economy, I don't know how Bart's 401k has been doing the last 4 years. Mine's doing great. So I'm not sure which economy he's watching. And so, of course, inflation's been a problem, but the Fed is on top of that now, as is the Biden-Harris administration. If she keeps talking economics, we're going to win.
Bart, your thoughts?
Gonna. She's gonna do this and she's gonna do that. What has she done in the last 4 years? And as I said, the people who are wealthy, people who have power, have done very well in the last 4 years. People listening to us who do not have wealth and power have done very poorly, and they're going to vote for Donald Trump because he's reaching out to them, and he will do for them again what he did when he was first elected president.
All right, gentlemen, Raj Goyal and Bart Marcois, thank you both so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.